It's a heat wave. It's 97 degrees outside, and today we're going to do Health in a Hot 10 Minutes. The second episode, it's called Are You a Forgetful Frida or a Forgetful Fred? So right away, we're going to jump into a funny story. I know it looks like Thanksgiving up here on the screen, and that's because it's a Thanksgiving story from my childhood of when my grandma Helen was cooking up the turkey, getting everything ready, all the different side dishes. And at one point in all of the crazy, she lost the pot holder. And, she asked everyone else that was in the kitchen. She even screamed it out to all of us kids, and no one knew where it was. So she just went on about making the meal. And then several hours later, when Grandpa took the turkey out of the oven to put it on the cutting board, he noticed right there, cooked to the bottom of the turkey, was the pot holder. Of course, you probably guessed that. Everyone had a great laugh. I mean, we laughed about that all day. She laughed as well. And then, honest, months later, and even on a yearly basis at Thanksgiving, we would say, Grandma, do you remember when? But now, as a functional medicine provider who strives so hard to keep my brain and everyone else's brain as healthy as possible, I can't help but wonder, was that an early sign of the dementia that grandma had to deal with years later? Or was that just one of those, it was crazy. There's 15 kids running around and she was making 8 dishes and grandpa was, saying something in her ear and it was just too many things to remember. That's something that I think about a lot. And that's what we're going to talk about today in these 15 minutes. So, we're going to talk about causes of forgetfulness. We're going to talk about what should we pay attention to now? And then also some advanced testing that's available now to us that wasn't even 20 years ago. So this is just my disclaimer. Basically, it's saying that I am doing this education as a community service. So take what you like and throw out what you don't. A little bit about me. I'm Dr. Megan Von Holtz. I am a chiropractor. I've been at Advanced Rehab and Medical for 18 years now, very long time. And I had my own health kind of in my eyes crisis about 2016 where I was wanting to sleep all the time. And at one point, I started losing my words and was tripping over my feet. I gained about 40 pounds. I would have these crazy mood swings where I would be all happy and upbeat and silly for an hour, and then I would have heart palpitations, and then I would be staring at a wall catatonic the whole weekend. So definitely not normal. And I wasn't really sure what to do, even with all my training, but I found functional medicine, and that is how I got myself healthier. And a big part of what I had to go through were things to help get inflammation out of my brain. And so I really love to talk about this. So hopefully you'll love what I have for you today. If you want to learn more about it, just let me know. I'll do more. I will tell you too, if you, as we're going through this, you're like, wow, I really want to learn more about this and I wonder how it connects to what I'm feeling, the best thing to do is to book a free 15-minute Reclaim My Life call. You can do that. The easiest way is to go to 731heal.com and book right there with whatever time works for you. Or if it's easier for you, just call the office at 731-327-9040. Now, this first picture I have up here is not the brain, it's the spine. But the reason I put this up here is this is something that we're probably familiar with. Because again, I'm wondering, what's normal and what's average, because they're different. So if you think about, you're driving the car and your kids are in the back and you used to be able just to turn around quick and tell them, to calm down or make sure they were okay. And now when you do it, or you do it for your grandchildren or your pets, whoever's back there, instead of just turning your head, having to turn like your whole body. And sometimes it's even pulling in your back. And it didn't used to be that way. Now, does that happen to a lot of us? Yes. So is it average? Yeah, it's probably average for people in their late 40s, 50s, and 60s. Is it normal? No. Have I had 70-year-old patients come into the office and not have any arthritis in their spine? Absolutely. because that is actually normal. Your body, like if we look at this textbook normal spine, beautiful disc spaces, no bone spurs at all. This first phase happens when your posture starts to change and certain segments bear more weight and your body feels that pressure or weight, not necessarily as pain, a lot of times just as tension. But when you have so much tension in the area, the body's not dumb. It's going to try to do something and it thinks, I know it's weak. Let me lay down more bone, just like if you broke a leg. So that's basically what these bone spurs, or another word for that is arthritis, is your body trying to stabilize an area that felt weak. So did it stabilize it? Yes. Is it actually better? Well, it doesn't move like it used to, right? Like if this was a neck bone, this is not going to move near as well as that. So even though you didn't necessarily have neck pain in this process, it just felt stiffer. This process is happening because your body is trying to help you. And I feel like what's happening in the brain with cognitive decline is similar. We don't always notice the symptoms. They're telling us now that most often they're diagnosing Alzheimer's or dementia in late 60s, 70s, and 80s. But they're telling us now you really need to be paying attention to what you're doing in your late 30s and 40s because what you're doing now is what's setting you up for what's happening later. So that's what I want to talk about. Like what could be happening underlying that we don't know about? How can we find out about it? And how can we make it better so that our brains work for us better? Part of where I'm getting information from this presentation are from books written by Dr. Dale Bredesen. He's a medical doctor that's done clinical work with patients and also research. I am so excited by so much of what he talks about in the books because he has research studies more recent in the last 5 years that have actually shown reversal of cognitive decline. So he's not taken anyone who had severe Alzheimer's and changed it, but he's taken that first phase of it, that mild cognitive impairment, and even early Alzheimer's or dementia and reversed it, where people are able to get their memory back. They're able to drive their car again and know where they're going and how to get back home. So to me, that is so exciting. And the even cooler part is how he's doing it is basically functional medicine, which is what we do right here at Advanced Rehab and Medical in Jackson. So, gosh, I'm going to go over my 15 minutes, I think. But the basics, I'll try to just hit the high points and we'll do more if we need to later. But he has broken it down into 3 categories: inflammatory, metabolic, and toxin. So inflammatory, anything that causes inflammation in your body could potentially cause inflammation in your brain. And there's a big connection between inflammation in your gut and your brain. That's a huge part of what functional medicine is, trying to figure out, are there stealth infections here in the gut that are actually impacting inflammation in the brain? Now, the metabolic or trophin loss, metabolic is, you've probably seen things lately saying that Alzheimer's is actually type 3 diabetes. So this is where that would fall. If your metabolism, your body is struggling to metabolize nutrients well and get rid of toxins well, maybe you're diagnosed with metabolic syndrome or diabetes. This is where that would fall into. And the trophic loss or trophin loss, when I think that, I think trophic factors, like things that would help us grow. So the brain has these growth factors that it needs. It needs antioxidants. So if you don't have what it needs, there's a deficiency, that's going to cause a problem that could be part of the factors that lead to dementia. And then toxins. And this can be far reaching from, toxins in the air to mold to actual parasites. So what Dr. Bredesen talks about in these books is figuring out of 35 different factors that he has found associated with this neurocognitive decline, trying to figure out which categories they fall in, and then figuring out what's wrong and trying to optimize that system, which is what we do in functional medicine. And I won't go over these in detail because we talked about it the last little clip that I did, but you can go back to that if you want more. To me, that all starts with some kind of stress that the body wasn't able to cope with, whether it's loss of a loved one or being overwhelmed or an actual injury, like a physical injury or a gut infection. And then it all goes into our endocrine triangle, which we talked about last time. But what I want to really focus on this time are these 8 things that can actually accelerate synapse loss. So accelerate the loss of communication between brain cells. The first one on the list, actually, and I'll tell you, this is really all about your personal or individualized risk factors. So if you have one of these, okay, if you have 4, then now's the time. Like, let's try to change them so that you can be healthier in the now and maybe prevent some of this neurodegenerative decline. So the first one is head trauma, and I probably won't be super popular for saying this, but this includes concussions. It includes concussions in 12 and 15-year-olds playing soccer and football. When you are told that your child or grandchild has a concussion, and you're told to follow the protocol that says to wait 2 weeks or a month before they return to play, it's no joke. If they have a concussion that they do not heal from, if their body was already a little bit depleted in some way, or they have a genetic predisposition, they could very likely end up with trouble digesting, trouble sleeping, trouble dealing with stress, and long-term neurodegenerative decline. It is something that actually accelerates the loss of the synapses. So it is something we need to pay attention to. Stroke history. Now, these middle, the hypertension, diabetes, high cholesterol, high homocysteine, you can find answers to all of those in a very simple medical appointment. So that's easy for you to come in and us to check. Low exercise, we already know if we have a right amount of exercise or not. And then there's specific genes. So the one that comes to mind most of the time is ApoE, but there are others that we can look at. And then I don't just want to tell you some of the factors, but also what are things that you could do right now, starting today, to make a difference. So first one is decrease inflammatory food. Since there is a connection between the gut and the brain, anything that we can do to decrease the inflammatory response to the food that we eat could theoretically decrease inflammation in the brain. Usually sticking to natural food that has not been processed, like fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and clean meats. That's the way to go, as long as you don't have an allergy to one of those. And then exercise. Exercise is probably, like, of everything ever researched, the only thing that consistently shows 30 to 50% decrease in all-cause mortality. Like, basically, it slows or decreases the incidence of death. So we need to exercise. Now, does it mean you need to run a marathon tomorrow if you've been on, a routine of no exercise for the last 10 years? No, of course not. But it means that we need to start, right? So maybe you start with stretching or Tai Chi, or maybe you've been doing a 10-minute walk every day just at the same pace. So every 3 minutes, walk faster for a minute, change up the pace, make it a little bit harder on your body so it's a challenge, and then make it a longer duration. Sauna is something that they have found in countries where people use a sauna daily or weekly. They actually have less incidence of neurodegenerative disorders. So they think that this is something that helps the body detoxify some of those brain toxins. Learn new things. Now, a lot of us are working and we're doing our to-do list every day, but we're doing a lot of the same things. And the brain really thrives when you can give it something different to do. So, go on an adventure. Purposely get lost in a safe place and find your way. Maybe get an app with some of those brain games, something different to challenge your brain. And then also always encourage people to empower yourselves. Get your own statistics. They make watches and rings now that will look at biometrics like variable heart rate or heart rate variability and oxygen saturation and how you sleep. So you can use those things to help you determine, Like for instance, if your heart rate variability is really low, like your body is going to struggle dealing with stress that day. So that's not the day that you should have an hour-long workout. That's the day that maybe you go to the sauna or you stretch and you really watch what you're eating. On a day where the heart rate variability is more, then you can push it. Those are things that you can actually track on your own. So I wanted to give you this because that's a question, like what can you do on your own? Those are some things you can do on your own. If you feel like you need more help, there's really amazing advanced tests available. One of them here, this is called the Lynx test. It's from a company called Cyrex Labs. And what they've actually done, it's a blood test, but they're testing for things that activate the immune system that they have linked to neurodegenerative disorders. So they're looking here, like here's growth factors, brain proteins like the tau protein that you hear about, pathogens, chemicals, food things that cross-react. So if we have this now and we see which areas are an issue, we can work on them and retest it later and see, are we actually making progress? Pretty cool test. This test is not specifically for brain health. It tells me more, is your body able to deal with stress? Like that cortisol should be high when you get up in the morning. It's part of what gets you up, and then it falls as the day goes on. But sometimes I'll see tests where it's very low, or actually the rhythm is completely opposite of that. And those are things that we would need to work on to help your body deal with stress better. The last one that I put in here is from Precision Analytics. It's called a Dutch test. And this will check that cortisol, but it will also check your hormones, because that's one of the things that Dr. Bredesen talks about in his book, that if he does talk about bioidentical hormone replacement, because think about estrogen. It doesn't just help with our sex characteristics, it also helps with bone health and brain health. So we need to be monitoring that as we age as well. So these are all ways that I can objectively see specifically for a certain patient where they're at, and then try to aim to make the system work better. So I'm going to just pose a question here. What one thing will you commit to today to get going in that right direction? Because really, some things are too important to put off. I'm not trying to add another fire to your plate, but if this is something that concerns you, pick one thing that you can do on your own. And if you feel like, gosh, it's too overwhelming to do on your own, then absolutely give us a call and we will do what we can to help. The best thing to do is that 15-minute free Reclaim My Life call, so you can tell me a little bit about what's going on and I can give you some guidance. 731heal.com or 731-327-9040. If you do that 731heal.com, you'll come right to this website and you just click right there. So hopefully you learned something from today. If you have questions, you can post them below or message us and we will get them answered. And let's see if I can stop this. Everyone have a great day. Thanks for joining.